Hi, everybody. Welcome to Cosmopolitics. I'm here with my good friend, Steven, who I'm not going to call Steve
Thank
because
you
I
very
won't let
much.
an N get in between us. Um, my friend, Stephen Cook, who is, I think I'm going to say this right, the Enrico Mattei Senior Fellow for Middle East
Middle
Studies,
East. Yeah, Middle East and Africa studies. But
Middle East and
people
African
get
Studies,
people get confused. They're like, "Oh, we'd love to talk to you about South Africa." And I'm like, "No, it was a wonderful trip, but it's really North Africa."
North
And
Africa.
right.
Um, Stephen is a good friend of mine for years, but we've been working together at the Council on Foreign Relations where I'm finishing up my Murrow Fellowship. They're going to have to pry my cold, dead hands from my desk. It's been such a great experience. You're going to miss me.
It's true.
You guys are going to miss me.
We're totally gonna
Um,
miss you.
but we've been talking over the last few days in various forums together and stuff about this Iran-Iraq war, Israel war.
Well, folks, I don't
But
want
it's
you to get like any impression. Like I texted Elise the other night, so tired, and she
well, what I said
immediately responded like, "Me too."
I said we're going to laugh, we're going to cry, we might learn something, but we're not going to walk away feeling impending doom like we normally do on these.
No. That's true. Very true.
Well, let's just dive in. I mean, we can go back or whatever, but let's just start with, where we are now. This morning we were just talking is like classic Trump. Like what he was saying about the parties and the ceasefire means he doesn't get it, but maybe he gets it.
Well, I think my thought process was, yeah, he doesn't get it, but at the same time, like because he doesn't get it, he drops the F bomb, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, the president! He must
He
be
means
really
it.
serious
Right,
about this. We
right.
better turn those planes around, or we better not fire up another missile." I mean, because you know how these ceasefires go. I mean,
Right.
I was letting a bunch of others know. I was like, "Hey," because they were kind of freaking out about it. I was like, the Israelis will draw this out like they did in October 1973. I mean, they drove Henry Kissinger and Richard Nixon crazy.
Well, they
Like,
said you have 48 hours to do what you're going to do, and then you better stop. So they
yeah, but
did
then,
whatever they could do in those 48 hours.
right, but they, you take a little bit of extra going
Even
forward.
said that, I think, in the announcement, like they're going to finish off their final missions.
Right. And then
Um,
the Iranians kind of violated it as well. I mean, they fired off a number of missiles, and then there was another one that was close to the deadline. I think it was very, very close to the deadline. And there was one last missile after the deadline, which was why the Israelis were, saying they were going to respond, quote unquote, very powerfully. And that's when Trump, on his way to the NATO summit in The Hague, this is my "Make Globalism Great Again" T-shirt.
yeah, we'll get to that.
He dropped the F bomb and said they've been fighting all this time. They don't know what the F they're doing. And I was like, that is the guy from Queens.
Well, and also a couple of things here. I think that Netanyahu got pretty spooked, which is if you see the comments from the Israelis, like, "Oh, we're going to
I mean,
adhere to
Trump
the
just did him a
ceasefire now,
solid,
Mr.
right?
President."
How Trump just did him a solid. For how many years has he been,
Right? That's what
beseeching
I said
American
this
presidents?
morning.
You gotta bomb this stuff. You gotta bomb this stuff. And then
That's what
Trump's
I
like,
said.
okay, we'll do that. That sounds good.
But then
Once the Israelis proved they
I
were
want to
doing
put it in
wrong.
my rear view. I think what I said, I did a live shot this morning for
Yeah.
NBC, I think. And then, so I said, the way the president probably sees it is I did what you wanted me to do. I neutralized, maybe not eliminated, obliterated, whatever, but neutralized the threat. And now you're going to do it my way. I'm going to put this in my rear view mirror. We're not doing anymore. We're moving on. You're safe for now to live another day, but let's go on. And when you saw
100%. I mean,
Netanyahu doing that, I
you
would
don't
have been like, what the
you
fuck?
don't have to be from Queens or Long Island or anything to understand what's going through Trump's head at the moment. He's like,
Right,
I
right,
just did you a solid, and now you're not going to play ball here?
right.
F that, man. So, in a way, we're seeing, Trump doesn't get it, but in a way, his reaction, as I said, got the Israelis' attention immediately. Immediately. So,
What do you think? Do we keep the cease? I mean, does it hold for a little while at least? I mean, I think this this round is probably, I mean, it's definitely not peace, but it could be
No, I don't see how. Look, the Iranians have been so battered, and their rate of fire has decreased so much. It's exactly what the IDF said. I attended a briefing, an IDF briefing here in Washington, where they said the math did not work in the favor of the Iranians. That the Israelis, through both their interceptions and their ability to locate launchers, would not be able to increase the rate of fire. And you saw that rate going down
yeah, but
over the
the
course of.
Israelis, their interceptors were also dwindling faster than they could produce them as
They
well.
don't. They don't. They say that that's a myth of the mainstream
Course.
media. That no, but Israeli journalists, not the IDF, the people who are not like in the tank for Netanyahu have said that's actually not the case. Yes, there's a finite number of them, but against the Iranians are going to unable to fire.
Then why would then why would the Israelis stop then? Why wouldn't they keep going?
Well, they did keep going. I mean,
But
they spent all
why
day
did they agree
yesterday.
so why did they agree to a ceasefire then?
Because Trump put the pressure on them. I don't think, and here's the deal: Trump did this with India and Pakistan. He just unilaterally declared a ceasefire. He didn't talk to the Israelis. He didn't talk to the Iranians. When it was India and Pakistan, he didn't talk to them either, and the Indians were really pissed. He just said there's going to be a ceasefire, and no one wants to say no. That's not what we're doing. And Netanyahu in particular was not in a position to say no. But I mean, the Israelis, I think, had this pretty well in hand. I don't see how the Iranians respond in terms of firing on Israeli cities,
Right.
because that would be a clear violation. I'm not going to hang around Jewish centers in European
Right,
cities,
right. Or a
not
bus
to
in
not to freak
Bulgaria.
anybody out.
Right.
Oh yeah, right. That's exactly right. I don't. Who knows what kind of cyber shenanigans the Iranians
Right.
have in
And what
store?
do you
Those kinds of
make
things.
of that hit that they hit in Iraq on the air base or in Qatar rather, that was kind of coordinated, like, okay, we have to show that we're doing something now. You hit
Oh,
this is
so,
what we're gonna do. It's
but
like
what was
it
it?
reminded me of, did you ever see the movie Body of Lies? Or read the Ignatius book with Leonardo DiCaprio?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
It created this whole ruse. Nobody was there. They put dead corpses in there from the morgue just to show that they were
Right.
doing this operation. And it seems like it was pretty much like that, right?
Well, this is just like the Iranian response to the Qasem Soleimani hit in early 2020, where they said, "Okay, this is what we're going to do," and so on and so forth. But I think this was even more coordinated because it was on Qatar, and I think the Qataris had a hand in
Yeah,
arranging the whole thing.
one of our listeners, Lionel, I agree that was for Iranian domestic consumption.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they had to respond in some way. So,
Right.
they were like, the Qataris told the Iranians told the Qataris told the United States. It was all coordinated in terms of timing and so on and so forth. What was funny though was that Al Jazeera wouldn't allow any footage of like Qataris taking cover in Doha. They'll someone throws a rock or someone throws a rock back in the West Bank, and Al Jazeera, it's like breaking news. But
You know what I thought was interesting is that what is Trump's mentality right now, that he was like going full throttle on Israel, but being like, well, Iran, it might have been a mistake, or they really didn't mean it, or the Iranians are being good with the ceasefire. Like,
right, right.
I feel like and this is what the Israelis hate. And I mean, you can't put the Israelis on the moral equivalence with the Iranians, but that's kind of what he did. He kind of put them both on the same plane and said, "You're both bad, but Israel's really bad."
He is always looking for leverage. He's always looking for leverage, and he has it with the Israelis right now. And he has no particular ideological commitment to Israel. This is not Joe Biden, who boasts
Right.
that you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist and that he
Yeah.
knows the prayers better than most Jews, guilty as charged. But like,
Guilty.
yeah, so seriously. So I think Trump is just looking for angles here. And what he wants is he wants a negotiated nuclear deal with the Iranians. And so he's got to call off the Israelis. And this is the way he's doing it.
Let's
I mean, I
go.
think it's totally
Yeah.
calculated.
Yeah.
And this is the way he's doing it. He wants to get back to the negotiating table. He sees what the Israelis did, and that's why he leaned into the Israeli operation. That the Israelis were doing well. he leaned into it, then it gives him more leverage
Yeah.
with the Iranians, and now he has leverage with the Israelis, or so he believes.
Okay. So let's talk about the negotiations. What negotiations? If you are like
I don't know yet.
basically, if there's well, but if you're saying that Iran has to give up
Dismantle.
all dismantle, that's not a negotiation. That's a total surrender.
Well, right, and so we'll have to
So
see when
what
they.
negotiations are there?
I mean, my sense is that the Iranians are going to come back to the table and they're going to say the exact same thing that they said to Witkoff before all of this happened. And we're going to be back to square one on the negotiations. I think that Trump thinks he's going to get leverage as a result of what the Israelis and the United States did, but I'm not sure that he's going to. And I think that after 5 rounds, Witkoff must have come to the conclusion that he wasn't going to get total dismantlement or no enrichment and those kinds of things. And that's why we were stuck where we were stuck. So I don't
So
know what's going to happen. And I think that if the president goes in thinking that, he's going to get total surrender, he's not. And this has been the rub the whole time,
right.
is that if your goal is total dismantlement and you haven't done it militarily, then you are backing yourself into regime change
That's what we both wrote. We both wrote yesterday. I mean,
independently.
independently. But this is a trap for him because he either has to accept that the Iranians are going to enrich. He has to go back and launch another, series of massive strikes or regime change.
Well, right. I mean, and this is why, the kind of slightly but not really unstated goal of the Israeli campaign has been to loosen the grip of the regime and see if the Iranian people will rise up and take over. I mean, that is the problem, is that the president, as long as the Iranians stick to, we have the right to enrich, we have a right to a program, he either has to, like I said, he's engaged in regime change, or he has to go back to the Israelis and say, well, you know what? The JCPOA probably was the best thing we can do. We're just going to call this one the TCPOA, the Trump
Right.
Comprehensive Plan of Action.
Right.
That's not going to necessarily sit well with the
Well,
Israelis.
wasn't Witkoff originally said the Iranians can enrich to 3%?
Well,
Which is
that was
civil.
that was the big controversy. After round one, Witkoff walked out and he's like, "Oh yeah, well that's fine. It's just for
Yeah,
civilian
yeah.
use." And everybody said,
Sounds good.
"Wait, you're agreeing to the JCPOA, and two, the civilian programs don't need that kind of enrichment."
Well, they could use 3%, right?
Well, right, but they don't need it. So that's the point. It was explained to me that enrichment, if you have a civilian program, you don't need to enrich.
At all.
And we're so far away from my expertise. All I'm
Right.
telling you is that someone said. So the follow-up question is, I don't know, but I was told by someone who's in a position to know that civilian nuclear programs, you don't need enrichment.
So what is I think they go back with the 3%. That's what I predict.
I mean, like the
He does
whole
whatever he wants. It's not
the
like,
whole
oh,
time,
I'm
right?
gonna
It's
I'm gonna
Trump's
get I'm
unleashed.
gonna get killed by people because of this. Does that make a difference?
No, Trump's unleashed. He is like, if Netanyahu thinks he's the king of Israel right now, because finally, after all these years, an American president was like, that seems like a good idea. We should bomb Iran's nuclear program. Trump obviously feels like he's the king of the world. And so my guess is that he's going to go back and kind of strong arm Netanyahu and say, listen, I did a solid for you. You agree to this. This is the best he's going to do. And there'll be all kinds of verification and so on and so forth.
Yeah, like inspectors.
But of course, I was asking this question, and maybe this is a naive question, or maybe it's not snarky. I was asking people, like, there's all this conversation out there around this about, well, if the Iranians, bolt from the NPT and they don't cooperate with the IAEA, it's going to be a huge problem. Like, well, why? I mean, they were cheating anyway. They had all this distributed sites. They had all these things that they were doing that were not under IAEA inspection. And basically what the IAEA knows is based on what the Iranians are telling them. So now let's look at the history of the IAEA in the Middle East. We've had 4 programs that we know of: Libya, Syria, Iraq, Iran. The Israelis destroyed Iraq. They destroyed Syria. The Libyans gave up theirs because they were under crushing sanctions, and Gaddafi was afraid of George W. Bush after the invasion of Iraq. And now what the Israelis and the Americans have done to the Iranian program. So I don't really understand, like, why the emphasis on the IAEA. They haven't there hasn't really, the presence of the IAEA has not necessarily stopped the development of either the acquisition of nuclear technology, nor necessarily the
Right.
potential weaponization of that technology.
So Iran has two
But
things
every wonk
now.
in Washington is like,
Right.
the IA